Ever noticed how in some families, one person always seems to be the problem? They're too sensitive, too rebellious, too emotional, or worse, too different. Maybe that's been you. Maybe you're the one who, no matter how much you try to be kind or keep the peace, ends up being the lightning rod for blame. You bring up an issue, you're starting drama. You go quiet, you're withholding. You succeed, they call you selfish. You struggle, here we go again. This isn't just dysfunction, it's a system, and systems protect themselves, often by selecting a scapegoat. But how does a family decide who gets cast in that role? Scapegoats aren't chosen at random. There's almost always a logic to the madness. Sometimes it's birth order. Youngest children challenge the norm. Sometimes it's temperament. The child who feels more sees more. And sometimes it's just proximity to a pain the family wants buried. Consider Exhibit A, Princess Margaret. In post-war Britain, she was the glamorous, outspoken sister of Queen Elizabeth II. But behind closed palace doors, her emotional volatility, smoking, and bold love affairs became easy tabloid fodder, and a convenient contrast to Elizabeth's stoic, dutiful image. Margaret absorbed the chaos of a family and a nation that couldn't afford imperfection in its figurehead. She became the problem so the institution could remain pure. In family systems theory, this is called homeostasis, the idea that every family unconsciously tries to maintain equilibrium, even if that equilibrium is toxic. The scapegoat becomes the unwitting sacrifice to preserve that balance. They're not bad, they're useful. And here's the kicker. That usefulness hides a hidden benefit for everyone else. When one person is always the problem, the rest of the family gets a lot in return. They get to avoid looking at their own flaws. They get a container for their collective guilt, shame, and frustration. They even get unity, a common enemy to bond against. Think of it like this. A pressure cooker doesn't explode if there's a release valve. The scapegoat is that valve. Take Exhibit B. Tiberius, second emperor of Rome. Known for his brooding nature and reluctance to play politics, Tiberius was constantly painted as aloof and dangerous by the Senate and even his own family, despite being a competent leader. Why? Because his introspective nature reminded the imperial court of the corruption it didn't want to see in itself. So, it made him the monster. That's the psychological mechanism at play here. Projection. The family's inability to face its own dysfunction, so it outsources it to someone who can't fight back. But what happens to the scapegoat? Years, sometimes decades, of blame rewires your sense of self. You learn to doubt your perceptions. You stop trusting your own emotions. You walk into rooms preemptively apologizing for your presence. Psychologist Murray Bowen called this the role of the identified patient. A person made to embody the family's anxiety or shame, not because they're sick, but because the system needs someone to be. And over time, that role hurts. It isolates. It fractures your identity. Which brings me to a question, one I'd like you to reflect on. In your own life, have you ever felt punished, not for what you did, but for who you are? Noticed how your sensitivity, your truth-telling, or even your silence made people squirm. And so they labeled you the issue. Drop your experience in the comments, because the pattern might go deeper than you think. Honestly, being the scapegoat hurts, but it also forges something in you. You learn to see through facades. You detect BS in seconds. You develop empathy for other outsiders. And when you heal, you become the one person in your family with the courage to break the cycle. That's not weakness. That's transformation. The biggest secret? You weren't scapegoated because you were broken. You were scapegoated because you were whole in ways your family wasn't ready to face. Your clarity, your conscience, your sensitivity. They posed a threat to the myth the family needed to survive. But once you see the pattern, you no longer have to play the part. You don't have to fix them. You don't have to win them over. You just have to stop believing the lie that their rejection is proof of your unworthiness. You were never the villain. You were just the only one brave enough to see the truth. If this spoke to something deep in you, share it. There are more people than you think living this same pattern in silence. And the first step to healing is knowing the role was never yours to carry. And if you liked this dive into human psychology through history, please consider liking and subscribing for more videos like this. Thanks for watching Historic Psychology, and I'll see you on the next one.